Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Thanks for spending time. Great to be with you on a Thursday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Damon Barr is in. We are loaded up. Bill Bender and George Darlington in hour 2. Brandon Vogel coming up. We were supposed to do high school football tonight. COVID put the kibosh on that with 2 top 10 teams. We would have been at the Seacrest Field now, but we're in studio. We're healthy and happy. We say hi to Gary Barnett, who's in the leadoff spot this Thursday. Coach giving us some time, bless his heart. And Coach, so you're down in sunny Arizona. You got to be happy about that. Has things turned in Buffland? Has it gotten colder out west?
It just happened to get a little cold today as we left, Chris. So good timing on my part. It was 39 when I left, and it was 91 when I landed. So perfect timing. You are on
it, man. Way to get down to those warmer temps. And I got to ask you, you're an offensive guy. What do you think of all the points being scored? That's where I want to start. Does it make you smile, or do you freak out for your defensive buddies?
Well, I think I freak out more for my defensive buddies if I were given one of 2 choices there, because you still got to play defense to win. And I think this thing it's not just one thing. It's not just missing spring ball and probably not tackling as much in practice. I think it's sort of a combination of all those things. But I think we're seeing, Chris, what started probably about 5 or 6 years ago with concussions being an issue, and people, spring ball rules changing, practice rules changing where you can't tackle, you can't go as live as you used to go. And I think what you're seeing is just fewer people really are good at tackling. And I don't think it's schemes at all. I mean, not that much has changed. But I do think that not being able to tackle, not being able to go full go, and not, that's part of the game. That's when you started playing football, you didn't just throw the ball, you learned to tackle. And now, you see a decline in the number of players that are playing a little bit. You see the concussion issues being, infiltrating absolutely everything that you do in high school football, junior high football, Little League, and college football. I think it's a combination of all those things. I don't think it's just any one thing.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. I think you're right about kind of the trickle down with just less contact in the name of safety, right? So you're either going to get guys that are really good tacklers from high school, or you hope you can develop defensive players that turn into good college tacklers on the defensive side of the ball. And we see some of the teams that continually do that, those teams that have good defenses and those teams that are trying to get there. But, what was your philosophy? How often did you go live, and what was that balancing act between beating the crap out of your team too much, but also getting them ready, because you were in the Big 12, but you also lived in the Big 10. I mean, 2 physical leagues.
I think a lot of it depends on your team, what they will buy into. And, I started recruiting guys who could tackle. I didn't care about their speed so much, but there was just guys that you watched on film that could tackle, because teaching tackling is really a very limited situation right now, and you don't get the time to teach it. You don't get the privilege to teach it because you can't go as full go as much as you need to in order to teach tackling. So there's guys who have a knack for tackling and guys who don't. So it came down for me to recruit more guys who could just naturally tackle people and like to tackle people, and not care so much about how fast they were. My teams, when we were really good, we were really physical. We made people change the way they practiced because we went live. 2001, for example, we went live for 10 minutes every day, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and everybody knew it. They got geared up. It was 15 plays of get after it, and it sort of created a mentality in our team. And, I remember playing Nebraska, and I remember Frank Solich saying we had to change the way we practice in order to play these guys. And when you do that, when you make the other team change their practice, then you sort of have a mental edge. But we were get after it 2 days a week for 10 minutes a day team. Now, I as time went on, we'd have 15 plays, and I'd blow the whistle after 13, just not want to take a chance. I wasn't going to get somebody hurt on the last play, on the 15th play. So I started coaching a little bit defensively like that. But I do think that you have got to build that mentality. If that's the kind of team you want, and that's the kind of team we wanted, and it's the kind of team our team wanted to be, was that we were going to be physical and we were going to make people change the way they practiced.
I think you have to have that mentality in college football to win, Coach. And I think you got to have it in the Big Ten. When I look at the Ohio States and the Michigans, and I look at what Fitz has got at Northwestern, I mean, it seems like and I think being in Nebraska, we have learned that over and over. Iowa, Wisconsin, I mean, and you won the league.
Yep.
It's just you got to get a team to buy in and adopt that mindset, don't you? Within the Big Ten, and especially even now in 2020. I mean, to get through the league, there's going to be teams that are super uber talented, right? With just guys that could go to the next level. But if you pair that with a mentality where they want to just squish you, I mean, that's winning football, isn't it?
Well, I believe so. And, of course, if you have, Ohio State's a perfect example of being able to do both. And, you can't always do both. You can't always have the talent that Ohio State has. But talent it'll take care of finesse on the defensive side. In other words, if you try to finesse a really talented team, you may win a couple, but you're not going to go win week in and week out. You got to have something else, and that's where the physicality sort of comes in.
What's your immediate reaction? Some early lines are out for next weekend, and Nebraska's dogged in Columbus. It's minus 21.5. What's your initial thought?
Oh, my initial thought is, first game, that's a lot of points to put on a spread. And to a team, Nebraska's got quite a few guys coming back, but you're also playing maybe the top one of the top two teams in the country. The points are one thing, but what's happened is everybody's watched the ACC for a while now. They've watched the SEC for a while, the Big 12 now, and it's sort of already shaken out. You know who the good teams are, you know who the bad teams are, and people want to see more good teams. And so there's going to be a lot more interest in Nebraska playing Ohio State now because there just aren't that many games. You look at the games this weekend, for example, there really aren't that many good games anymore because some of these teams have already decided their fate. And so I think you're going to see a lot of interest in that game for one thing. But, that's probably about right, Chris, I would think, given a team as talented as Ohio State is and how long everybody's waited to play.
I want to ask you about the Nebraska quarterback situation, and I know we talked a little bit last week. There's still no decision. There's been some more clarity on it, as in just how well Luke McCaffrey has performed and the work he put in with his family and the steps he's taken to close the gap. And it's not like Adrian's had a bad camp either. He's been really hungry because he didn't like how last year went. But in your experience, when you have a guy who's going into his third year, potentially as a starter, get pushed by a kid that just a glimpse of. I mean, a total of 12 passes, but man, he's dynamic with the run game, and he's improved as a thrower. Is that more of a statement about, wow, we hit on this McCaffrey kid and we know about his family, or is it a statement about just where Adrian needs to go to take that next step? How do you view that?
Well, first of all, don't make a decision until you have to make it.
Right.
And, especially in this case. So you're going to give it more time. You're going to let things shake out a little bit more. You're going to assess things a little bit longer because, if you'd made this decision 2 weeks ago, it would have been way too early, and the chances of that not being a good decision are much greater. And so I think in this case where you've got a dogfight, don't make your decision too early. And, we talked last week about it isn't all that bad if you got to play two guys. It comes down to how the team views it, not how you view it or how the fans view it, but how the team views it. And if they see it as a dead heat, then whatever you do, if you play them both, they're going to be good with that. And I don't think you should necessarily be afraid of doing that.
Is there an instance with you where you had a good problem at quarterback where you had, man, it was so close? Is there something that comes to memory?
Sure. Yeah, I had a really hotshot young guy at Northwestern, and in the spring prior to the Rose Bowl year, I made a decision before I needed to make a decision, and I went with him at the end of spring. And, as the course of the summer unfolded, he didn't do what he needed to do as the quarterback. In fact, he didn't even show up for camp in the fall. So, I went with Steve Schnurr after giving another quarterback, Chris Hamdorf, a battle. Those two battled it out, and then I went with Steve. But, you got to be careful about that sort of stuff. And I'm speaking from experience here in making a mistake. So, yeah, it's happened to me.
So how did the conversation go with Steve that since the guy didn't show up to camp? Was that pleasant?
Well, no, it's never pleasant. But Steve showed up to camp in a boot. He'd hurt his ankle over the summer doing 7-on-7. Mm-hmm. And so Hamdorf was really Chris was our only, and he was from Iowa, and he was our only real healthy quarterback because the other guy didn't show up, and Steve was in a boot. But he wasn't going to be in for long, and so when the hardest conversation was to tell Steve that I was going to go with Lloyd Abramson, a kid from Michigan, that's who we were going to go with at the end of the spring. That was the tough decision. And then I had to back out of that one after Lloyd failed to even report in the fall and say, Steve, you're back in contention. And, most of that comes down to him and not me and how he reacted to it. And he reacted to it just fine. I'm sure to this day, if you put us in a room, he'd say he was really pissed, but that's okay. We got through it. Excuse me for using that language.
You're good. You're good, Coach.
So, anyway, it worked out.
Gary Barnett.
We're doing a big webinar tonight on the Rose Bowl game.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to see Steve.
That'll be great. That'll be cool. Coach, last thought, and Gary Barnett's with us. Thanks for squeezing us in. Interested to see how you think things shake out with Bama and Georgia. I know Saban's probably not a great patient. I mean, he's zooming now. I guarantee he's zooming now about the game plan. Sark will take over the duties. But this now is down to 4.5 points. I think Bama's still favored. But what do you think Saturday night?
Well, he's not playing Ole Miss's defense, so they're not going to put 56 points or 62 points or whatever it was And I don't know if you got a chance to watch that game.
Loved it. It was a great game.
Good grief. Talk about there wasn't a tackler on the field for that game. But, it started off at 6, and I don't know whether it dropped because of Saban being out with COVID, but I got to think that top to bottom that probably Georgia may be a better team because they are so good defensively, and they're just good enough on offense. So, I would take Georgia if I were prone to bet, which I'm not. But if I were, and no one should take my advice, by the way.
Right.
I'm probably about 33% for the year, but I think Georgia with 3 points is the way to go.
Coach, a lot of season left to get that flipped.
I know. I'm working hard at it, Chris, but it's a crazy year.
It is. Coach, you have a good webinar with your Northwestern team, and best to you down in Arizona. Stay safe and healthy, Coach. Thanks for the time today.
Thanks, Chris. Great being with you.
Take care. It's Gary Barnett with us. Get things kicked off, and he is awesome. Usually our 505 Central spot, but he has got a reunion with his 25-year anniversary Rose Bowl Northwestern team. That was awesome. Love his perspective on the quarterback. We'll hear some more about the quarterback, and don't worry, we'll get to Coach Lubick and Wandale and Mr. Mustache, Cade Warner, or Super Mario, as he's been called on social media. Brandon Vogel's on the way. Great to be with you on a Thursday. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
That was good stuff from Gary Barnett and Damon Barr, Between Drinks of Rum. We'll get that posted on Twitter and the ESPN On Demand section, ESPNLincoln.com. You read him with HailVarsity.com, and the new magazine is out. Finally, football season. Get your issue today. Get your subscription today. HailVarsity.com and magazine. Bundle it and smile. We say hi to Brandon Vogel, managing editor at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, I've got football fans that I don't know if they're trying to aerate their backyard, but they're sitting on the deck listening to the show. Nick and Bert, and one's drinking a Leinenkugel, the other's drinking a Sapporo Japanese beer that's just phenomenal. And that is not fair torture because it's 60 and fallout right now, and they're good for them to be listening. Bad for me that there's a half bottle of beer that's gone. That they're taunting me with.
Yeah, that is a bad deal for you. I enjoy the Sapporo. It's not one of those beers where you drink it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the best beer I've ever had. But it's just pretty light and refreshing in a can that, if you've ever picked up or seen the Sapporo can, that feels basically indestructible. Like you could run over that thing with your car, and I'm not sure you would dent it. So I'm with you. I'm with them. These fall temperatures feel pretty great, and hey, we're almost there. A little bit more than a week away, I guess, from Nebraska football. It took a lot to get there.
You know, it did, and I was talking to Coach Barnett, and his take was that's a lot of points for Ohio State to be favored, but it's not completely off. That's how I kind of interpret it because of what Ohio State is. We got into tackling and points and all that's gone on in college football early on. And it's just kind of a trickle-down thing, 5-6 years ago where you're just not getting that much contact, and then here's your 2020 version of some teams can tackle and hit and some can't, coupled with some good schemes. I'm interested in your thoughts as we move forward here. What's the offense do for Nebraska early on? What's your take on the point spread against Ohio State? We'll hear from Wandale didn't care. What's your immediate reaction to that here, that number, and then the Nebraska offense? What do you think they can do early out of the gates here? Really good defenses and good opponents the first couple weeks here.
Yeah, I think the number to me was about what I thought it would would open at. 21.5. Don't know if it's gone up or down since it was released a couple of hours ago, but yeah, that's about the difference. I think you can look at a handful of power rankings and see that that's pretty much where they'd have it. But and this is we've talked about this at various points over the lead up to this schedule. One of the good things about playing a team in week one, specifically a team like Ohio State, is you don't know. I mean, a large portion of those power rankings are based on last year, and there is traditionally a lot of carryover year to year in college football. But Mississippi State was a 17.5 point underdog at LSU. So take solace in that, I guess, at least as far as week ones go. Maybe having watched Mississippi State play in the weeks after that game, maybe don't take so much solace in that. So you just open that door for a good amount of uncertainty. And I think that's true of any week one, but I think you even amplify it a little bit given the unconventional offseason that we've had. But I think you're on the right track overall. Nebraska has a lot to replace defensively. They've got some work to do on that side. But the bigger question for me still is what can they do on offense? Spent some time this week for something that'll go next week. Looking back at that 2018 Nebraska-Ohio State game versus 2019, one of the big things is they had early down success. They stayed on schedule against a Ohio State defense that was super talented. So when it gets time to preview that game, and thank God that time's getting close, I think that'll be a key part of it.
Matt Lubick met with the media today, and the head coach Frost earlier in the week, and this competition, I'm sure, is kind of grating on the coaches, just the questions they've got to continually answer. But fans want to know where's this thing at. But as you look at it, I'm interested here with McCaffrey's just jump, right? The jump as a passer, because we think the guy's an athlete and he can run and the zone read side of things, and even on the move, the guy can be effective throwing the ball, but how effective can he be? And, what's that gap, Vogues, when it comes to the passing game and the quick blinking, right? That's the key to this offense with Frost and everybody that is part of it with Frost. That's Lubick, that's Verduzco. And to me, that's the amazing part. Not that he can't do it, but he's done it this soon.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing to really assess from our point of view, and from anybody's point of view who's not there and seeing practices, which is a severely reduced number at the moment, because you can't make that determination. You can't say essentially what Wan'Dale Robinson said, that Luke McCaffrey's taking 10 steps as a passer, because you don't know, and you don't even really know, 10 steps from where, because
right.
He only threw 12 or 14 passes last year. That's the tough part. But when you really start to kind of stop and break this down, I think, and to be completely honest, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think the first time that Matt Lubick spoke at a post-practice availability, he said, yeah, if we had to play today, Adrian Martinez is the guy. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's pretty much where I was at too. And it's only been since then that we've really had to consider, okay, maybe this isn't signed, sealed, and delivered, that's the starter. And if that were to be the case, if McCaffrey were to basically close that gap and maybe overtake Adrian Martinez, I think the big thing would be the passing game. Can he be basically an equivalent or better passer than Adrian Martinez has been over 2 years as the majority starter? Because you could look at him and you could look at his family and factor that in and say, yeah, we have a pretty good feeling that he can run the football and make some things happen and make some plays that way. The problem is, Adrian Martinez is an accomplished runner. That's probably his best foot forward at this point. Most of the questions reside with the passing game, but when you look at this as two people competing in a race, you're kind of looking at the same foot race, I guess. Like, okay, we've got two guys that we feel good about. Like, hey, if they need to scramble and make something happen, much less a design QB run, you feel pretty good. It's who gives you the most in the passing game. And that's where I think that race gets pretty close.
Vogues, I think the attention to detail and the commentary and feedback on Coach Lubick, not only his familiarity with Coach Frost, but just kind of the jump, I guess, or the familiarity with each other has made a second year or a third year in this offense, or even a first year for some guys, really move forward, specifically with their development or understanding or just what they need to do. When we look at some of the young wideouts for Nebraska, and I know there's some question marks, not necessarily anymore about Wandale or Alante Dingwise. They're healthy, it sounds like, per Lubick. But just, when we talk about a Betts, when we talk about a Houston, when we talk about some of the other wideouts, do you feel better about some of the young guys contributing maybe sooner rather than later this season?
I think they'll contribute, but the fine line I have to walk with that is, are they contributing because they're ready to, or because it's what Nebraska needs?
Gotcha.
It's been interesting with Nebraska's wide receivers, and we kind of know Omar Manning was a guy who was easy to point to and said that's a difference maker, and we don't know his status for this first game. And hopefully that works itself out. Alante Brown is a new addition / scholarship guy whose name has come up often. Lubick said today, he's good to go. He's a full go in practice. After 2 days ago, Frost mentioned that he'd been nicked up. So somebody like that helps. But, all of the wide receivers is a key area of intrigue for Nebraska, so much so that these players and coaches get asked about it really every time up. And the names you hear are Levi Falk, Kurt Warner. You get a handful of walk-ons in there, which gives me a little bit of pause, not because they couldn't be immediate, contributors and a good addition to that room, more developed with another year in the program, but we're all well aware of sort of the depth issues Nebraska has battled on the wide receiver front and really tried to address with signing 5 in the 2020 class. But those aren't the names that you hear, which I'm honestly not sure what to make of that at this point. It makes you stop a little bit because until you see them on the field, until you can see what they can do, Kurt Warner's a guy that I think most people feel pretty good about, but when you're in the off season, 2-3 months ago, when you're just like, okay, who are the first 3 wide receivers out? I think because he's a walk-on, perhaps he doesn't make that top 3. So what do you do with that? And it's just tough to know at this stage in fall camp.
Well, you see, I got about a minute left. You see other programs have freshmen come in and kick butt. And you get a guy that has high-level recruiting rankings or wowed you on film. Why isn't he ready at Nebraska? Why can't Nebraska get a guy? Why can't there be more Wandales? And to be honest, they're the exception to the rule. It takes a dude 2 years to learn how you got to play at this level, honestly, in my opinion. Even if he's got first-round talent, it takes a while to get ready for it. Vogues, will get caught up, brother, on Saturday morning. I want to thank you and Aaron Sorensen and the crew at Hail Varsity for the nice tribute to my dad in the magazine. I really can't say thanks enough for that. That made me smile today.
Excellent. That's all we were going for.
Good talking with you, and thanks so much, bud.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That's Brandon Vogel, managing editor, HailVarsity.com and magazine. We'll get into some comments from Matt Lubick, more on the Husker offense, the quarterback race, thoughts from Wandale and Mr. Mustache, too. Next hour, Hail Varsity rolls forward.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
All right, we'll hear from Bill Bender's Sporting News, 25 minutes. George Darlington, he's got football facts going on, and Coach George will check in with us at 5:25. Let's hear from Matt Lubick. I haven't called him Sonny, have I? Not with Brandon. My mind is racing. I remember meeting his dad, and his dad was an awesome coach. He is an awesome coach at Colorado State for 100 years, was the defensive coordinator for all those Hurricane teams that just whacked about everybody. But this is Matt Lubick. Let's just get to it with the quarterback race and what Lubick had to say about Adrian and Luke McCaffrey, because this is what we're interested in. He'll be able to have a voice on the say at quarterback here. And here is Coach Lubick from earlier today.
Well, it's an honor. First of all, we feel great about all our quarterbacks. You know, Luke and Adrian are playing at a very, very high level. And just in the brief time that I've been here, I've seen huge improvements. It's an ongoing evaluation. We evaluate it every single day. They both can win for us. They both are moving the ball. That's going to be a decision between Coach Frost, Mario, and myself. That's going to come up very soon.
So that was Matt Lubick on McCaffrey and Adrian. Let's run the Wandale commentary on the quarterback race. We'll get you perspective not only from Warner and from Lubick, but here's Wandale Robinson as he was able to open up a little bit about the steps that he made with the progress. Luke's battle, cut 19. Got it. Here is Wandale Robinson. We'll hear more from Wandale, but let's keep it quarterback-centric right here.
It's just a testament to how much work Luke's put in. During the offseason, I'm sure he was with his brothers working. I know he was watching film, doing everything he can just to become a complete quarterback. That was obviously something that he felt like he needed to probably step up in, was the passing game. And so, which in our scrimmages and things like just in practice, you can tell he's taken 10 steps in that phase of the game. And so he's looked really, really good all throughout practices and everything.
So you can put the work in, you can get better, and to do that during the hell that has been pandemic 2020, that takes a special kid with a special family and maybe an older brother that's the best at what he does. So all of that work together, and you've had Adrian that's made strides, and Adrian's healthy. So we'll see where this is at, if they're on the field at the same time together. Have fun with that. Defenses, and I am there to see that. So I can't call Matt Lubick Sonny, which I haven't yet, and I can't call Cade Kurt. I haven't done that yet. But I got a kick out of Kurt Warner telling Cade to shave that thing, because Mama wants to see, her baby's face. And our old friend Danny Woodhead chiming in saying, don't you dare touch that. There's the ongoing Twitter discussion of who's got the better stash. Is it Cade Warner or is it Westerkamp? And Jordan was Mr. Stash. It was the Magnum PI look. He made a Hail Mary and ran, and caught a lot of balls. Some magician work, by the way, during his career. So here is Warner back to the quarterbacks on just where Luke's come from. And there's been no shortage of compliments that have been well earned on Luke McCaffrey this week.
I mean, they're both very athletic guys, and that's always cool to see. Them roll out of the pocket, make plays. But I think the biggest thing this year that they've progressed on is being able to stay in the pocket and make those throws. They're difficult throws, and they're making them now. So I think that leap forward has been great to see, especially as a guy catching those footballs. It's been great to see. But I think they both took a step forward in being able to stay in the pocket and throw. Adrian's done a great job increasing on his deep ball accuracy, as well as being able to play all three levels of the passing game. I think Luke's done a great job coming in here and competing, pushing Adrian every single day, saying, hey, I'm coming, you better keep working. So Luke's done a great job being a great leader in that role. And I think that 1-2 punch that they both have is a great dynamic for our football team. It gives our defenses a ton of different good looks, which is awesome to see. And I think they can both bring something to the table.
Think about this. You have your flat, you have your over the middle, you have your deep passes. And Adrian, ever since he's been here, the guy has been fantastic with dropping some throws into a bucket. A lot of them were to Spielman. I mean, think of those big plays. I look at the throw on the move McCaffrey had to Noah last year against Indiana. That was sweet, and that's a hard play to make as you're rolling and throwing on the run. Takes a special athlete. And the thing with Adrian, and so let's just talk about the time that they have in the pocket. Well, the offensive line's given him time when they've been live. So don't breathe wrong on the quarterback, but there's been some pressures. And to be able to be accurate and find that play over the middle. The other thing, too, is you're going to have touch in this offense because in the red zone, if they don't just power it in with Mills in the offensive line or the quarterback run game to be better, more efficient in the red zone offensively, don't kid yourself, man. I mean, I think you're finally going to see some alley-oops to Austin Allen. You've got bigger wide receivers. You can put bets in even as a freshman and let him go high point something. And that's not uncommon. Last thought here from Cade Warner on McCaffrey.
Yeah, I think growing up around football, it's a lot of competition between you and your siblings. Your dad, obviously his dad played too, so it's a lot of competition within the family. And I think that brings it onto the football field too. And I think he brought back that kind of competition aspect of it. So I really liked what I've seen from him. He's a great guy. He's played really, really well. And I'm happy to see that for him because I love the dude. But yeah, no, he brings a different mindset because he has so much energy, so much built up, just passion for the game. So it's always fun to see him out there and play. And I love when he's out there with me.
Last thought from Lubick, keys that go in to making that quarterback decision on how soon that happens.
There's a lot of things, but the biggest thing is who gives us the best chance to win. They both can win. They both can play. But who gives us the best chance? And the fact that it's a hard decision is a good situation because, like I said, we got two guys we feel really good about.
So there it is. More from Coach Lubick and Wandale, his commentary on the point spread. You know, there's a lot of Nebraska fans out there that are fearing this Ohio State game. I'm excited for it. I'm anxious. The 21.5. You're going to have Nebraska with a bit of chip on their shoulder. And I know that that's very common. Well, yeah, no one likes how last year went. 5-7 was a kick in the junk. I get you. And no one is more pissed about it than them. Now, does that translate to covering the number against Ohio State? No idea. I will tell you in a week. But did Nebraska have any business hanging with them 2 years ago? They could be better than 2 years ago. We'll wind down hour one next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Bill Bender's coming up 10 minutes away. Sporting news, college football thoughts from Bill. We'll talk with him about Nebraska, the COVID Saban situation. George Darlington at 5:25, longtime Nebraska assistant, Hall of Fame assistant coach, as Coach George will join us. So let's dive into some NBA for 2 seconds, and that's Ty Lue, the pride of Mexico, Missouri, him and Cookie Belcher. Loved watching Ty Lue play ball and get Nebraska to the NCAA tournament. Was so excited for him when he got the title done and won in Cleveland. That was great. Got hosed. Shouldn't have been booted. Not his bad. So now he is following his mentor, Doc Rivers, as Woj announcing that Lou's agreed to a 5-year deal with the Clippers. And the thing about Lue, and I talk to people around the league that know him from his days at Nebraska, but also folks that are in the NBA. Ty Lue has had the ability to in his career absolutely earn boatloadfuls of respect. That's from Shaq. That's from Jordan. That's from LeBron. That's from ownership. How and why? How does a guy that was a really good role player, and remember J.R. Ryder? I do. You won a dunk contest. Really good ball player. More physical skills than Ty Lue. Well, Lue got his postseason roster spot under Phil Jackson in the Iverson-Laker finals almost 20 years ago. How'd that happen? Shouldn't, right? You got J.R. Ryder, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" dude that can shoot, dunk, drive. Then there's Lue. Well, Lue's work ethic has been matched by very few. As a player, as a teammate, as a coach, and as an assistant. And with Lue, he needs a second crack. He needs another chance. And I think his personality, guys will buy in for Lue. And you've got a ton of talent there with the Clippers. And for Doc to not get it done with their lead, Denver's a special squad. They're fun. They're really talented. But when you've got Kawhi and you got Paul and you've got some of that talent on that roster, Doc probably was sick of dealing with them a little bit. Maybe his voice started, and I hate saying this about Doc Rivers because I think he's awesome, but his voice probably started sounding a lot like Charlie Brown's teacher. And then there's Lue. And guys like Ty Lue, guys will play for Tyronn Lue, and guys will win for Tyronn Lue. This may be the answer. The other dude, Chauncey Billups, another stud with the Buffs and their NCAA tournament team. You know what Chauncey did for Detroit and another championship. So very similar guys. Chauncey was probably more of an all-star ball player, but Chauncey's going to get groomed because he wants a head job. And he'll get groomed, and this is part of the Doc tree. And you can make this hire because of the respect level for Lue. And who knows LeBron and the Lakers? Lue does. Played for him, and he coached LeBron to a title. Know your enemy a little bit? So this makes some sense. Bill Bender's coming up. Sporting news. Some thoughts on the NFL and college ball next.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Get things kicked off. Hour 2 at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Bill Bender back with us. The sporting news. Talk some pigskin at Bill Bender 92 is where you find him on Twitter. Bill, was supposed to be a pretty awesome weekend of college football, and COVID has reared its ugly head. The bombshell yesterday with Saban and athletic director Barr contracting COVID. And I know if Saban could, he would find a way to have a Zoom meeting on that sideline. That isn't allowed. But, man, what's your reaction to the outbreak in the SEC?
No, I mean, it's every week, and this one's more pronounced. It poses some big-picture questions about the season itself. I mean, I think if Georgia and Alabama for some reason get postponed, then we're going to have a big problem because that was the biggest game on the season to this point. So I think there's a lot of things at work there, but we'll see what happens next. And as we talked about before I came on, I mean, you got to wonder what it means for the Big Ten as they get ready to play here soon.
Well, and that's just the question, in our neck of the woods, Nebraska, Ohio State, a week from Saturday. Man, there's been so much excitement and anticipation for that. All that being said, the Big Ten's been pretty diligent with their daily testing, and the thresholds are just incredibly intense to be able to even play. So we'll see. And I know the SEC's been doing, in some schools have done daily testing. At a minimum, they've done 3 tests per week. And I guess A&M and Mississippi State is the next game to lean on, because LSU and Florida were supposed to go, and that's been postponed. To talk defenses here for a minute, what's your take on why offenses have been so great? Is this COVID related, or are offenses on just a whole new level this year?
Well, I think there's many layers to that. Obviously, the offenses are good in general. There's a lot of skill position talent. I mean, last weekend alone, you're watching Ole Miss and Alabama, Texas A&M, Florida, Missouri, LSU even, and the offensive talent is pretty superior. Now, not having a full off season, not having spring practice, not having, tackling in a lot of ways at a lot of places over fall camp, all adds up to higher scoring games. I do think the game has become an offensive game. We all know that. But I guess, Chris, to your point, it's really hard to kind of pinpoint what a good defense really is.
It is, and I've had to reevaluate this too, Bill, because I watching Nebraska growing up, 14 to 17 points, 21 points even, as we got into the 2000s, pretty acceptable. And I'm not even a yards guy as much anymore. It used to be, oh no, they got 450 yards of offense on your defense, and you talk to a defensive coordinator, and his response would be, yeah, how many points did they get? It's like, well, point taken. I get it. But now it's, Bama's allowing 30, Florida's allowing 30 and 33 points. LSU's been bludgeoned, and it's just harder to kind of reload, even with some of these high-level, prestigious programs. There's the learning curve of a defense, and then there's experience on top of refining the tackling. And then there's less and less contact, obviously, Monday through Friday in college football. So I don't know, man. I think if I can get off the field on third down, 70% of the time, and my red zone defense is giving up 3s instead of 7s, I can deal with allowing 28 points as long as my offense is getting me 35. That's kind of the new normal, don't you think?
Yeah, and it really is. And it's become that. And I think 20 to 24 points isn't a bad defense, a game. Mm-hmm. As long as you're scoring 40. You look at the high-scoring offenses at LSU, Alabama, Clemson. We always sit there and say, well, Clemson didn't play great, but they end up scoring 50 points, and they give up 28, and that's considered bad. But that might actually be the new normal in some ways, where you win 52-28, and that's a good game.
I think that point total, you hit 30 points. Wow, you had a good day offensively. No, you had a normal day offensively. I want to go there for a moment, and I know you're in Big Ten country, and I'm anxious to see Nebraska against Ohio State, and I'm interested. Things still aren't settled here in Lincoln at quarterback. The competition is very real between Adrian Martinez and Luke McCaffrey. And as you look at a year 3, and I know you're familiar with Nebraska and Frost specifically, but what do you anticipate, Bill, just from a national view with this offense, with Nebraska this season? What do you think the offense can be? And I know it's a bit of a tough question because I can't tell you who the quarterback is, but just in general, when you look at Frost's track record offensively, what can year 3 look like?
Well, there's a lot of the unknown, and I think we'll see how it goes. But, again, I think that he's done a better job of recruiting some skill position talent that fits his system. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the quarterback battle. That's going to be something that comes into focus. The early season schedule, obviously, is beyond. Brutal would be an understatement to what they're facing early. But, you got to come along with that. So I still think Nebraska, and I always fall back on his own quote when he said, we're going to build this brick by brick, and it's going to take longer than expected, but I'm not pandering to my audience here, but I think Scott Frost is still the right guy for that job.
Mm-hmm. No, and the other side of that equation, we're just talking defense. You know, how much better can the Nebraska defense be in the Big Ten against the run? And what can they do getting after the quarterback? What can you do takeaway-wise? Because it is situational football a lot of times. The other question I have with the Big Ten, Bill, what do you think happens defensively? I mean, I look at Ohio State, I look at Iowa, and I look at Wisconsin and Penn State too. I mean, those are premier defenses. They're top 20 defenses every year. What's their outlook? Are teams in the Big Ten going to be able to score 30-plus points? I don't think I remember Wisconsin or Iowa allowing too many 30-point games, to be honest with you.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see if they make that adjustment to style. And that's what Ohio State kind of did that when they hired Ryan Day. They went to a more – remember that first season with Ryan Day, and they scored a ton of points, but they couldn't stop anybody.
Right.
And they won the Big Ten with one of the worst defenses in Ohio State school history. You know, they end up beating Northwestern. Now it caught them and bit them when they went to Purdue and lost the game. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my theories with this kind of offense is every once in a while you can play that offense and it's great. But every once in a while you'll catch a team that can play some offense too, and it certainly throws everything off.
What can you survive, right? I mean, that's just that, you know, can you get enough on a bad day defensively from your offense where you've got to win a shootout, right? It used to be, can you win a 9-6 game a few times a year and survive the physical toll, right? What's your depth look like? Depth is still important, but now is your offense going to have enough points to just flat out outscore somebody someday? It's awesome to see how things have transitioned in the world of college football. Is Ohio State your favorite for a championship run? I mean, I look at what they have, and I know what's coming back offensively, but defensively they're going to be really good again too. I mean, they'll be as good or better when you look at personnel Clemson-wise. I mean, there's not a lot of new parts to plug in there, is there?
No, Ohio State will be really good. They've got just good quarterback. I've heard a lot of good things about their receivers. Garrett Wilson's going to be a sophomore. He's going to be a name that jumps into a lot of living rooms this fall. Chris Olave, obviously. Yeah. They've got depth at that position and a lot of speed, which fits that system. You know, we'll see what Trey Sermon does at running back. I think the hole they're going to have to fill is not an easy one, but I always say, you know, they lose Chase Young. You're like, well, who's going to step up and do that? But, you know, we said that about the last two Bosa brothers, too. They'll find somebody. It'll probably be Zach Harrison.
They'll be really good. Can't wait for that 11 o'clock kick, Nebraska at Ohio State. Bill Bender talking some football with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Read Bill with the sporting news. Follow him on Twitter at BillBender92. Bill, going to get to the weekend of the NFL, and let's go to Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Cleveland's really feeling things at a high level, and I know that Chubb's out, but the run game's been big time. The defense has been good enough. What's your early lean here between Pittsburgh and Cleveland? Does Cleveland break through here, or is it still Pittsburgh's division?
Well, I mean, that's the big question. This is the biggest game these two have played probably since their wild card game in the early 2000s. And, you know, it's a statement game for Cleveland, which has looked efficient, especially on the offensive side. I still have a few questions about the back end with their defense. But in Pittsburgh, I mean, they've always won this game, whether it was with the Bengals or the Browns. They typically find a way to win this game. So it's going to be a fun afternoon, and with those two teams going at it. And, you know, they're going to see each other maybe two more times. I think both teams are playoff caliber. That division's really tough, and the Ravens will have something to say about it too.
Yeah, Ravens, I did not mean to just step over our old buddy Sam Cooke and his Ravens. they're really, really talented. But, yeah, I mean, this is get you those old feelings growing up watching the AFC Central. This will be a lot of fun, too. Tampa, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay. The Tampa offense is moving towards more cohesion. They've looked better. Green Bay is just a party right now. They are fun. Aaron's playing really good football. Are you going to nestle up to a bar near you and just smile about this as the Packer fan you are?
Yeah, you got to enjoy this game. I mean, and the funny thing is, and I know this as somebody that's watched the Packers a lot. It's weird that Brady and Rodgers have only played head-to-head twice.
Man.
It just, and then they had one in Lambeau and one at Foxborough. There was a couple. The injuries just got in the way. I mean, and AFC and NFC teams only play each other once every 4 years anyway. So it's kind of been that star-crossed matchup. They're not, as Aaron said earlier this week, he's not playing Tom, even though that's how we get to look at it. And I think hopefully both quarterbacks will put on a show and make it one of those fun games. This is a game that the Packers normally lose. I hate saying that as a fan, but if they win this one, then you'll have to start to really believe that this is a team that is fully capable of being the best team in the NFL.
Bill, I want to spend a second here before we say goodbye on Joe Burrow. What's Joe shown you? I know they got their first win. I know they got limited to 3 points by Baltimore last weekend. Indy's really struggling at quarterback, but overall, Phillips been one of the good guys in the NFL. Have you been encouraged? I know you're a Packer guy, but you're in Bengal territory. What's the feedback you're feeling? They may not win more than 4 or 5 games. They may win fewer than that. I don't know. But what's your takeaway so far in the early returns with Joe and, of course, a second year with Zach Taylor?
They got to protect him better, and that's something that's going to be a theme every week. The protection is weak. I think Joe Burrow stood in there and said all the right things. He is the right guy for that job. There's a lot of charisma to him. But now they have to invest in their investment. You know what I mean? They've got to get him some better protection. He has good skill position talent around him, and their defense should improve. But again, I just mentioned that division, right, Chris, where you're dealing with the Steelers and the Browns and the Ravens, and that's a tough division to deal with. And I love watching Joe Burrow play. I just hope he doesn't get hit so much this year that it's kind of like that David Carr effect. I mean, he's on pace to take the most sacks in a single season.
No, that's it. I mean, I look at Andrew Luck early, right, in his career, where he'd get whacked 45 times or 30 plus. I mean, it was somewhere in that window. I don't have the exact number, but I mean, Burrow, what is the record? I mean, is he going to get sacked 70 times, 60 times on top of the fact that there's hurries and knockdowns? I mean, he should have been broken in half, Bill, a couple of times this year. He's a tough kid.
Yes, and I think it'll be something where, we just you can't take too many hits like that. Andrew Luck's a really good comparison because, we didn't expect Andrew Luck to retire so soon, but if you look back at that early phase in his career when the Colts were rebuilding, he did take a lot of hits. So hopefully Burrow can play through that, and I think he will. And, it starts up front with the Bengals, and that improvement has to continue. He can't take 7 and 8 sacks every week.
No, and he's just getting crushed. Well, plenty of football this weekend. Let's hope it's COVID-free. Bill Bender, sporting news, and good stuff from him on the NFL and college football at Bill Bender 92. Bill, always appreciate the time. Good to get caught up.
Hey, no problem, Chris. Thanks so much.
Good to talk to Bill Bender. Love sneaking in some NFL there, and good thoughts on Nebraska from Bill Bender. Speaking of Huskers, a Hall of Fame assistant, longtime man behind that Husker secondary, and it's football facts time. George Darlington. Coach knows a thing or two about the recruiting trail, knows a thing or two about trying to stop those hybrid offensive players. So George Darlington checks in with us as we'll talk some offense, defense, and Big Red. George Darlington next on Hail Varsity.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmidt on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Welcome in a Hall of Fame coach with Nebraska, And we say hi to George Darlington, longtime assistant for Coach Osborne. And I tell you what, Coach, football's almost here. It's got to make you smile a little bit. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing better today, and I'm happy that football is back. I hope that maybe after one home game, the Big Ten will allow partial stadium participation. But as of now, of course, that isn't the case.
We can hope. That'd be good. I know you're doing football facts again. We'll get there in a moment, but I want to start off with Nebraska and this 2020 season and kind of get your feel. Still no decision yet on the quarterback situation. A good, and I don't even call it a problem, a good depth and choices to have. But let's start off with Coach Frost and the offense here. Where do you think the team can make some strides here this season?
Well, number one, as you mentioned, we have two excellent quarterbacks, and obviously one of them has played other positions at times, so you can continue to do that. I think we've common thought is the offensive line will be improved, and the tight ends, we have a wealth of tight end talent, and we could modify some of our offense and be a la Stanford in a way, and some of the other offensive positions were okay, but the strength is the quarterback in the offensive line and at tight ends.
Get into that a little bit, because you spent a lot of years trying to defend the tight end or the wide receivers, and you watch a lot of football. You know how valuable and what type of mismatch the tight end can be. Give us some thoughts, if you can, just how big a headache that can be when you flex out a big body that can run.
Well, you can have a tight end lined up as a tight end next to the tackle, and then if he has the skill like the kid from Burke, you can split him out as a wideout and give you a height advantage against a smaller corner. So you have a lot of flexibility in that regard. And it forces the other team, if they don't substitute to play wide receivers, all of a sudden you have tight ends running in the game that should win a lot of blocking battles. So it gives you more flexibility. If you have one good tight end and he's the only one you have, you pretty much tailor everything else to handle the wide receivers and obviously the running back.
Coach, with the quarterbacks, with McCaffrey, I think back to 1999, where you had Crouch playing different spots, and you had Newcomb start out at quarterback, and then Newcomb ended up shifting to wingback. But you guys got the ball to Crouch in a lot of different ways before he moved behind center, and you found ways to get the ball to Bobby. Is that something you expect to see with McCaffrey if he doesn't win the job?
Well, I think that Scott might use McCaffrey differently than Bobby, because Bobby finally they decided he was going to be strictly a wide receiver, and after the early games he did not play quarterback. In the case of Nebraska right now, I would assume that both of them will be quarterbacks and the whole time, and you'll have McCaffrey be in there with Adrian at the same time, which creates more problems for defenses.
Let's talk defense real quick. George Darlington's with us on Hail Varsity Football Facts. His course is back for another fall. The outside linebacker spot, I know you coached that for a number of years, and Nebraska needs some production. They've got some bodies there, but you know, what were things you looked for when you guys ran that 52 that was really a 3-4 those years with outside linebacker? And you think this is the year that maybe a step forward's taken off the edge for Nebraska? They've got some really good talent there. It just needs to emerge a little bit more.
Well, it's going to have to, because the defense last year was one of the poorer defenses in the nation. And it wasn't necessarily coaching or anything like that. It's just that we didn't have very good talent. And if the talent is not improved, we're going to be having a season, because we had void positions last year where people were lining up and playing to their heart's attempt, but they just didn't have the skill to compete against a good team. and they didn't present any problems per se for the opponent. We have to greatly improve defensively, and we have to greatly improve in the kicking game. If you're going to win a game, you got to win 2 of the 3 phases at least. And if we don't stop the run, and we're just going to be in a bad shape of trying to guess what to do in which situation. You've got to have the ability to force people to throw the ball and have defensive backs that can match up. And quite frankly, last year, the linebacker positions and part of the secondary were substandard. I'm not saying anything about their effort or anything like that. A couple of them had great attitudes, but they just weren't blessed with the talent to play winning football.
George Darlington, a few more minutes with us. Longtime Nebraska assistant. Football Facts is his class back for another year. What do you think of all these points, all the points being scored, Coach, in college football the first few weeks?
Well, they have some, offenses have some good schemes, and they have talented people that fit those schemes. And you really better have pretty good talent on defense, because otherwise they can isolate a guy and make it awfully difficult. And it really gets back to talent and then scheme. You've got to have a sound scheme and then mix things up and take advantage of down and distance, etc. But there's no question there are a lot of points being scored, and the offenses have some good schemes. But again, you have to, on defense, figure out, okay, here's their scheme, and this down and distance situation, here's what we're going to do. We expect a high percentage of run, let's say, and you have to be very sound, and you have to get a lot of repetition to compete.
Coach, let's talk about Football Facts. How many years have you been doing this?
This is about my 35th year, as near as I can figure, and this has probably been the last 5 or 6 years where we've basically split the class. Students from Omaha go to, or did go to Millard South, and the students in this area come to the old Gallup building, Tuck building on 68th Street for an in-person class. So it's fun, because the hard thing for me is the Zoom class with the Omaha group on a Tuesday night, but class in Lincoln will be pretty much normal. Of course, you'll have social distancing, that type of thing.
George Darlington's with us, and your Football Facts in Lincoln in the old Gallup building, South 68th. Going to run from Thursday, October 29th through December 10th. 6 classes. Of course, it'll be done virtually on Tuesdays with the Millard South class, or the Omaha class, Tuesday the 27th of October through December 8th. Coach, where do folks go to get signed up if there's any room left? And this will be pretty special. It's always fun and informative, but the film you're going to get, especially with as weird as 2020 is, it's going to be some pretty telling behind-the-scenes stuff with, what went on and why things happened within the game, correct?
Yes, that's very true. It's going to be even more advantageous this year, because we can run back plays, which we always could, but often if you had sat in the stadium, you could see certain things. Well, now people can't sit in the stadium, and the TV only shows so much. And so I think the class, along with the general approach to learning more football and learning the rule changes, etc., will be very, very vital. And if a person's interested in football and the Huskers, this will be a perfect situation for them. And there will be limited seating because of the coronavirus, so we'll only be allowed to have about 30-some people. So it'll be important for people to call Southeast Community Continuing Education and or fax them and get enrolled for the class.
That'll be good. Coach, last thought, and excited for you to have another season of Football Facts. What's the message to the team? Do you remember an instance at all before a big game or before a kind of a giant opponent? And I know Nebraska for a lot of years was that opponent for many teams, but now look at this game coming up a week from Saturday against Ohio State. What's the message to the kids to get them ready? I mean, they're excited, absolutely, to play, but they're going up against a team that could win it all.
Well, it's going to be a great opportunity for them. I assume our players, first and second team, are getting a lot of repetition and practice, and they need to have confidence and be excited to go play Ohio State. 2 years ago when we went there, we scored first. We faked the kick, which now we would say we shouldn't have tried. And then late in the game, we missed a block and had a wide-open receiver to go ahead late in the fourth quarter. So 2 years ago, we played them extremely well there. They're very talented, but the ball is oblong. It'll fumble, and if you're playing sound football and you're prepared, you've got a good chance. We just need to improve in those areas where we had problems last year. The kicking game especially, we lost probably 2 games on kickoff coverage, and one of them being the Iowa game at the end of the year. And those things, I'm sure, have been addressed, and hopefully the kicking game will be much improved. And then, like I mentioned, you've got to be able to stop the run, especially in the Big Ten. And if you can't stop the run, you're just going to be struggling. You're going to have to outscore people.
George Darlington, longtime assistant Hall of Fame coach for Nebraska. Football Facts, get involved with it. The Southeast Community College, get signed up with Coach Darlington, and a look-see at Nebraska football 2020. Coach, you stay healthy. Best to you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks a lot. Great to chat with you, and it's exciting to have Husker football back.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Good stuff from George Darlington. We are at Wilderness Ridge tomorrow, the happy hour with Hail Varsity. You're invited out 4 to 6. Shuey will be riding shotgun with me. So please come see us. Great food and drink specials. The deck will be not only heated, they've got those little heater areas, but it'll be covered if you've not been out to Wilderness Ridge. Please do check it out. It's just fantastic. But 60 and sunny tomorrow. I don't think there's going to be a ton of wind here in Lincoln. So come on out, see us, enjoy the show live. We'll have some speakers set up outside for you to check the show out. And plenty of football to talk because 8 days away from Nebraska football against the Ohio State University. Reminder about buckling up. 70% of fatal crashes in Nebraska. Not wearing a seatbelt, if used properly, seatbelts can reduce the risk of fatal injury by 60%. Your best defense in any crash is buckling up. Brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. So let's talk about buckling up for Ohio State. Let's get ready as Ohio State is 21.5-point favorites. Damon, did you know a guy that lived down the hall from you early in your college career that you could go to and say, here's 100, give me the Buckeyes?
I never had that bookie connection in a good
Ever?
old Shram. No, I didn't make those connections.
Man, there was always the guy in the corner dorm. One corner had a green thumb. The other was all about setting the line. So listen, again, to be continued on whether that spread will move up or down. But Wandale, he isn't a fan of that 21.5. He was asked about it today. Here's what the Husker standout wide receiver had to say.
All right, they can have it. That's kind of how I look at it. At the end of the day, there's not 21 points on the board already, 0-0. So whoever comes out and plays the best, whoever comes out and fights, that's how I look at it. We don't really care too much about the favorites or anything like that. We just got to come out and play football and play our game.
That tone of voice, all right. I mean, it's plenty of motivation anyway, but whatever, man. Hey, we'll see. We'll see. Ohio State may be out for blood. And I know Nebraska's ready to try and right some wrongs from last year. And some of the guys remember 2 years ago. So let's talk about Cade Warner and all the work he's done as a blocker, as a leader, as a pass catcher, as a guy that's healthy. But specifically, the work that is getting the most talk today, the facial hair. Some of us have had different gory phases of facial hair. Some of us haven't. And you know what? He is going full Mario. Here is Cade on the stash today.
Usually it's a fall camp stash. So this season has been kind of a weird fall camp, kind of elongated. So my mustache is just growing and growing. And then I'll probably cut it come the first game. But I'm getting some people from the team telling me, no, keep it. So we'll see. Trust me, I don't think it looks good. I just think it's funny. I just wear it because it gets a little laugh from people here and there. But yeah, it's a fun little thing to have, I guess.
Ron Jeremy called and wants your mustache. Tom Selleck has called and wants your mustache. Val Kilmer, all right, called and said, I'm your Huckleberry. In Tombstone wants that mustache. So there have been great eras of mustache wearing. Jordan Westerkamp, of course, about 7-8 years ago, burst onto the scene with the stash, and now Warner has picked that up and ran with it. Would you keep it? Damon, are you going to grow one in tribute this year?
If I could, I get about like 6 weeks in and it's just barely starting to show. So I don't think I could come anywhere close.
Would you go with the Fu Manchu?
I guess that's what I'd have to go that route. I think
not just the stash, but go a little bit.
You go a little
further down with the soul patch.
The soul patch is really what would bring that together. I
think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. My dad had an incredible mustache. I never tried to replicate it. So I don't know that I'll go there. There is a rule that if you grow a mustache, one of your two vehicles needs to be a windowless van. Elijah has grown a mustache and has been beaten mercilessly for it. More from I about to call him Westerkamp. More from Warner and these football watch parties. This is pretty good camaraderie. This is leadership off the field.
Yeah, so it all started me just asking the guys, because obviously there's some stuff we can go over in film, and we only have a certain amount of time allotted per week to go over different things. And there's different questions you can ask somebody when you're their player and they're doing the things, and then when they're a coach. So I kind of just hit up all the receivers and I said, hey, I am free any day. I am bored. I just play video games all day. Use my free time, please. I'm tired of doing this. Use my free time. Come over during the games. I can bring snacks. Come over. I'll just put a whiteboard up and we'll just explain plays. So Alate's been there. A bunch of young guys have been there. And it's really just me going over what I see on the field and how I attack defenses. And I think that when you understand a defense and their weaknesses and their strengths and where we're trying to hit different plays, it can help you run routes in terms of the timing and depth you have to be. So there's different ways to run routes. I just like to go over that with guys, and I love talking football, so it was a great little getaway for me to be able to talk to them, and I hope they've learned a lot from it. But yeah, I keep doing those. Whenever people hit me up, I've had guys after the first couple sessions, I kind of weaned away, and I said, all right, we'll see if they want to hit me up, and I've had guys hit me up every week to kind of go over and keep doing it. So I think they like it. I think they're learning a little something from it, but I enjoy it, and it's good to see guys wanting to learn.
You want to talk practical application? Right? I'll never use this in my real world. Well, football's football. And, yeah, this is what is happening in the Chiefs game. Here's what Tyreek Hill ran. And here's how it maybe fits or meshes with the Nebraska offense. More from Warner here when it comes to standing out in camp.
Well, I think first and foremost, I mean, everyone always says it when they talk about me. I know the plays. I know what I'm doing. And I think that helps, especially with the young wide receiver room we have. A lot of guys are learning the playbook for the first time. A lot of guys were on scout team last year, aren't familiar with it. So I think me knowing the playbook immediately and being thrust into that leadership role when kind of everybody left was a big part of it. And then, so then I know what I'm doing, and then I've done a good job being able to make plays when my number's called this fall camp. And I think that comes with kind of a little bit of a culture reset we've had in the wide receiver room. That me, Wandale, Coach Lubick, and all the guys have done a really good job kind of setting. So I'm excited for that. We're not afraid to make plays. We're not afraid to mess up. That's a big thing. And I think another thing, too, is with Lubick here, it's a kind of a blank slate. And I think with a blank slate comes more confidence. I think I'm able to play with more confidence in the field. I think a lot of guys are not being afraid to fail. We preach that a lot. And I think that is becoming more of a tool for the wide receivers this whole year. And I'm really excited to show you all this season what the wide receivers have in store.
We'll hear a last thought here from Matt Lubick. And just what does that rotation look like at wide receiver? Is there a Xavier Betts alert? More to come. We'll wind down hour 2. It's Hail Varsity presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
All right, the gauntlet has been thrown down by Uncle Mark. So, in reference to the Westerkamp / Warner stash devotion today, we, the Schmidt boys, are going to grow a mustache until Nebraska's first win. That sounds so wrong. That sounds so disrespectful. We're going to grow it until they win. Like, Nebraska's not going to. Okay, schedule's a schedule. So this could be kind of funny. And it'll keep our wives away from us. Because clearly that's always a problem. So, yeah. I will look like I need to be locked up. Straight up. And I don't think it's going to come in. I don't. Like, I can go full stubble. And when the facial hair gets a little longer, it's white. I'm freaking Santa, which absolutely sucks. Wide receivers. Let's talk about the receiver rotation. Where's Xavier Betts fit into that? Where's Alante? Where's Wandale? I don't think we have time for Lubick's comments on the health thing. But Wandale and Alante are healthy now. They're full go, as Coach Lubick said. But this is the thought here on that wide receiver rotation. How set is that? How deep is it? Where's Betts fit in?
We have not made that decision. Xavier in the last 2 weeks has made some big steps. He's getting reps, with the twos. We do a lot of reps, so we're able to rep some of our freshmen and give them shots with the ones. We have ones, twos, and threes, and we kind of intermix them. It's too early to say. He's made some big improvements. I do think he'll help us this year. But as for this week, we haven't decided on that. And when it comes to how many guys you're going to play in a rotation, you're going to play as many guys that can help you win. If we feel confident, a whole bunch of guys that know their assignment and can help us win, we're going to play more guys. If we feel confident in just 4 guys, we're going to play those 4 guys. Fortunately, we feel confident that we'll have multiple guys that we can kind of move in and out there that can execute and win us football games.
Good stuff. I think they've got bodies. Are guys ready to go make plays? And how much of the playbook do they know? And what can if he's working with the twos, great. I mean, Betts physically is a dude that can go make plays for you against Ohio State. How much can you ask of him to do this early in his career? So get the podcast. It's on Spotify. It's on Google Play. It's on Apple. And check the podcast out tomorrow. Wilderness Ridge, happy hour with Hail Varsity. I'll be there with Mike Schuart. Shuey is sitting in tomorrow. He is riding shotgun. And please come see us. 4 to 6 out on the deck. There's heaters. There's bourbon. There's vodka. There's golf. It's an incredible time, and the fall colors are beautiful. So come see us out at Wilderness Ridge. Happy hour with Hail Varsity 4 to 6. Stay for an incredible dinner afterwards. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for spending time. Great stuff from Gary Barnett, Brandon Vogel, Bill Bender from the Sporting News, and it was awesome to catch up with longtime assistant and Hall of Famer George Darlington with Nebraska football. For Damon Barr, Chris Schmidt, talk to you tomorrow from Wilderness Ridge.